Title: The Salt Between Us. I learned 2 things the week my sister decided to fix my life. First, family believes in shortcuts. And second, the ocean never does. My name is Marley. I'm 30, bilingual, and stubborn in the quiet way. Stubborn enough to make rent by ghostwriting speeches for people who like the sound of courage but don't want the cost. I was living in a studio above a Vietnamese bakery in Auckland, where mornings smelled like coffee and pandan, and the stairs always creaked on the 3rd step. I told myself I liked the independence. What I really liked was not answering to anyone's disappointment. When Lynn called and said she'd found a stable arrangement, I laughed so hard I spilled fish sauce onto my laptop. "It's not a date," she insisted. "It's an agreement. You always say you want predictability." Predictability was a joke. My last marriage had dissolved not in a dramatic explosion, but in a long, damp silence that smelled like old dishes. 2 years of being polite roommates, then signing papers like we were canceling a subscription. I didn't want a new relationship. I wanted a clean desk, a steady bank balance, and enough time to write something under my own name. Lynn sent a photo. A man in a navy sweater stood on a pier beside a research vessel, his hair cut short, face weathered but calm. He wasn't handsome in a magazine way. He was handsome like a tool that fit the hand, useful, solid, unpretentious. Evan Cho, Lynn texted. 41. Chief engineer. Works on a polar research ship. Home twice a year, 10 days at a time. Divorced. More than once. 1 child. She paused, then added, "The child can't be alone. That's the point." She called it like she was describing a plumbing problem. I asked for details. Lynn exhaled. Her name is Iris, 17. Brilliant, complicated, and risky. The doctor said the same phrase everyone says when they don't want to be blamed later. High risk. He needs an adult in the house whenever he's away. If you say yes, he'll put his salary into an account you control. Your job is to keep the girl alive, keep the place running, and keep things quiet. I should have said no. I should have asked why a man with money couldn't hire a professional. I should have wondered why 2 previous wives didn't stay. Instead, I thought of my bank account and the smell of that 3rd step, and the fact that my work came in waves. Feast, famine, panic. "Just meet him," Lynn said. "Have a meal. You can walk away." We met at a small Sichuan place near the ferry terminal, the kind of restaurant where the chili oil stained the tables, and nobody cared. Evan arrived early and stood when he saw me, as if politeness was a habit his body performed even when his mind was elsewhere. He wore a sapphire blue hoodie under a jacket that had seen storms. His hands were rough, nails trimmed too short. When he smiled, it wasn't charming, it was apologetic, like he was sorry to take up space. He ordered plain tea for himself and asked what I liked. When I said spicy, his eyes warmed with relief, as if we'd already agreed on something important. We ate. We talked about practical things first. My work, his schedule, Iris's school. He didn't flatter. He didn't overshare. He listened with the expression of someone accustomed to engines that only run when you keep paying attention. Then I asked the question Lynn told me not to ask. "Why did you divorce?" Evan's chopsticks paused midair. A faint color rose in his cheeks. He swallowed. "I've been married 3 times, he said softly. The room didn't change, but my body did. I felt my spine straighten like a warning. 3 marriages meant 3 versions of the story, and stories always hid the knife in the last paragraph. Evan didn't rush to defend himself. He rubbed his palms together, as if warming them over invisible heat. The first marriage. Iris's mother came from a wealthy family. I was a mechanic then. Her parents wanted more. She wanted more. I'm not angry. I understand. He said, understand the way some people say forgive like a thing you swallow because spitting it out would taste worse. And the other 2? I pressed. He stared at the steam rising from the hot pot like it held the answers. They left because of my kid, he admitted. Iris is difficult. Not violent, not cruel, but she carries something heavy. She needs supervision, and she hates supervision. She's smart enough to make every rule feel like an insult. He looked up then, directly at me. His eyes were long-lashed, and for a second he looked younger than 41, like a boy asking whether he'd be punished for telling the truth. I don't want a nanny. I want someone who stays. I should have asked why he thought I could. Instead, I asked about money, because money is the part of shame you can measure. Evan didn't flinch. He named numbers calmly. like he was reciting engine specs, the salary, the per diem, the hazard pay. Then he said, "If you agree, I'll transfer my income to a joint account you manage. I'll pay you a bride price too, call it an apology for the burden." When he said burden, he didn't mean himself. He meant Iris. He meant the quiet terror of a parent who has watched a child stand too close to an edge and pretend it's nothing. When the bill came, I reached for it automatically. Evan stopped me, slid his phone forward, and said, "We split." Not because he was stingy, because he wanted the equation clean. That was the first thing I trusted about him. Later, outside, Lynn texted, "Well," I stared at the fairy lights on the water and wrote back, "Bring me to meet the girl. That decides everything." 2 days later, Evan drove me to a tidy house, tucked behind a row of pohutukawa trees. The neighborhood was quiet in the expensive way. Lawns cut evenly, cars parked politely, windows that never looked surprised. He unlocked the front door and apologized for the mess. Which wasn't a mess. It was a life arranged by a man who cleaned when he remembered and stopped when he got tired. "Iris," he said, "refused a housekeeper. She'll clean her room," he explained, "but she doesn't want strangers touching her things." We sat in the living room. Evan spoke too much, as if talking could build a bridge before the storm. He explained the safety measures. Alarms on doors, cameras in the hallway, not in bathrooms. He promised, saying it quickly, aware of how it sounded. Iris's room had a sensor on the window. The pantry had locks on certain items, not because he feared her stealing, but because fear makes parents do strange accounting. "She agrees," he said, "most days. When she doesn't, we fight. Then she gets quiet. Quiet is worse." Footsteps came from upstairs, slow, unhurried, almost theatrical. Iris appeared at the top of the stairs in a white t-shirt and gray shorts, hair falling around her face in a dark curtain. She was startlingly beautiful in a way that felt unreal, like someone had photoshopped a Renaissance painting into a modern hallway. Her skin was pale, her eyes an unusual shade of gray-green that looked colder than it was. She leaned on the banister, studied me with the practiced focus of a person who has been studied too often. Evan's voice tightened. "Iris, this is Mara." He almost said something else, future wife, maybe, but stopped. Iris walked down and stopped a careful distance away. "Hi," she said. Not rude, not warm. Her tone was exactly neutral, like a lab result. She looked at my hands first clean, trimmed nails, ink stain on my index finger from editing, then up to my face. "Are you here because you want my dad?" she asked. "Or because you want his account number?" Evan's shoulders stiffened. "Iris," he warned. She shrugged. "It's a fair question. Adults always have a reason." I inhaled. I could have lied and made everything pretty. Instead, I said, "I'm here because your dad asked for help. And because I need stability. And because I'm curious whether we can make a household that doesn't feel like a cage." Iris's eyes narrowed at the word cage. Something in her, small and angry, recognized itself. At lunch we ate in silence, broken by short, sharp questions. Iris asked what I wrote, how much I earned, why I didn't have kids, whether I believed in therapy, whether I believed people changed. Evan watched us like a man listening for the first crack in ice. When Iris pushed a half-finished drink toward me, I pushed it back toward Evan without comment and opened my own. The gesture was small, but Iris's mouth twitched, almost amused. She understood games. She also understood when someone refused to play. That evening, Evan and I registered the marriage at a small office that smelled like printer paper and raincoats. He moved fast. Not romantic fast, but deadline fast. His ship was leaving early, and he needed to know Iris wasn't alone. In the car afterward, he kept apologizing, then apologizing for apologizing. "You can still back out," he said. I looked at him, this man who could repair engines but not his own fear, and said, "I won't back out because I'm scared. I'll back out if it becomes unsafe. That's my line." He nodded like a man grateful for a line to hold on to. The day he left, he loaded groceries into the kitchen and labeled everything like a new roommate. He showed me the fuse box, the emergency contacts, the school counselor's number, and the neighbor who could drive if the car died. "If Iris has a night," he said, voice dropping, "call me. If you can't reach me, call the emergency line. Don't try to be a hero." Then, as he lifted his bag, he added, "She's not a bad kid. She's just sharp. Sharp things cut the people holding them." After the taxi pulled away, the house felt too large. Iris came home from school before sunset. I heard the front door, the soft thud of shoes, the pause that meant she was checking whether I existed. She didn't call my name. She didn't slam doors. She walked past my study and said, "Dad told you the rules, yeah?" I said yes. "Cool," she replied. "Then you'll understand I'm not changing mine." An hour later, I walked into the kitchen and froze. Iris stood by the refrigerator with a towel wrapped around her, skin still damp, hair dripping down her back. She was nearly an adult, but still a child in the way danger doesn't care about birthdays. My throat went tight. I turned away, staring at the counter as if it could save me. Behind me, Iris laughed quietly. "Relax," she said. "It's a house, not a church. I live here." I stayed facing the counter. "You can live here however you want," I said carefully, "but you can't make me your audience. If you're trying to prove you don't need supervision, there are better ways." Silence, then the soft sound of a glass filling. Iris said, almost bored, "You sound like a guidance counselor." I finally turned, keeping my eyes on her face. "I sound like an adult trying to keep a house functional. Put on a robe, Iris. Not because I'm scandalized, because I'm not here for your war." That was the first time I saw irritation flash across her expression, and, beneath it, surprise. She wanted me either to panic or to scold. Calm was the one response she couldn't use as fuel. She walked away, towel still on, but slower, as if she'd misplaced her script. The first week was a series of small collisions. Iris refused dinner, then appeared at midnight to eat cereal loudly. Iris slammed her bedroom door once, then remembered the sensor and stopped. Iris mocked my schedule, then asked quietly if I could drive her to an early rehearsal because she'd missed the bus. I did. In the car, she stared out the window and said, "If you're doing this to make Dad like you, it won't work." I replied, "I'm doing it because you asked. That's all." At night, I set an alarm every 2 hours, the way Evan asked. The first night I obeyed. The second night I compromised. 1 check at midnight, 1 at 3, 1 at 6. I refused to become a ghost that hovered outside a teenager's door, because hovering is a form of violence when you do it long enough. When I told Evan this on a crackly satellite call, his voice went tight. "You can't loosen things," he pleaded. "Not yet," I said. "If we tighten everything, she'll break the whole system to breathe. Let me do it my way. I'll keep her safe, but I won't make her feel hunted." Evan went quiet, then said, "Okay, I trust you. I don't know why I do, but I do." Iris had scars. I didn't see them at first, not clearly. She wore long sleeves even in summer, and when she didn't, she moved like she was keeping her arms out of sight. One afternoon, she reached for a bowl on a high shelf, and her sleeve slipped back. I saw pale lines, healed, not fresh. My stomach turned. I pretended I hadn't noticed, because noticing without permission is its own intrusion. But that night I sat at my desk and typed a sentence I'd never wanted to write. "We need help beyond me." The next morning I called the school counselor and introduced myself as Iris's stepmother, which felt like trying on a coat I wasn't sure I deserved. The counselor's voice softened in the way professionals do when they've already seen the file. She didn't give details. She didn't blame. She said, "We've been encouraging ongoing support. Iris resists. She's brilliant, and brilliance can be a fortress." I asked what the safest, least invasive step was. The counselor said, "Start with consent. Start with choice. Offer therapy as a tool, not a punishment." That evening at dinner I said, "I want to propose something." Iris didn't look up from her phone. "If this is about cameras, save it," I said. "It's about control. Yours." Her eyes flicked up, sharp. I slid a small card across the table, the name of a youth therapist who did sessions online. "You can meet them once. 1 session. If you hate it, you walk. I won't mention it again for a month. Your choice." Iris stared at the card as if it might bite. "And Dad?" she asked. "He doesn't need to know details," I said. "He only needs to know you're not alone with your brain all the time." For the first time, Iris didn't answer with sarcasm. She stared at the card so long the rice went cold. Then she said, barely audible, "Fine. 1. She shoved the card into her pocket and stood up. Halfway to the stairs, she paused, back still turned, and said, "If you tell him anything, I'll never speak to you again." I replied, "Then I won't tell him anything you haven't chosen. I can be trusted with silence." She went upstairs without another word, but the slam she'd practiced was absent. The therapy session happened on a rainy Sunday. Iris shut herself in her room. I sat in the living room with my laptop open, pretending to work, not listening, not hovering, only existing close enough that she could knock if she needed a witness. After an hour, she came out, face unreadable. She went straight to the kitchen, poured water, and drank like she'd run a marathon. Then she said too casually, "The therapist asked me if I feel safe here." My chest tightened. "What did you say?" I asked. Iris stared at the glass. I said, "I don't know." That night I caught her watching something violent on her laptop news footage spliced with horror clips, the kind of content that makes your skin crawl. Not because violence is impressive, but because it offers the illusion of control. You can pause it, rewind it, survive it. Iris's headphones leaked screams into the hallway. My pulse spiked. I knocked once and said, "Turn it down." She didn't. I opened the door a crack and saw her hunched over, shoulders tight, eyes locked on the screen, not smiling, not enjoying, just feeding a storm. When she noticed me, she said, "You scared?" I could have lied. I said, "Yes, not of you, of what you're using this for." She scoffed. "It's just a video." I stepped into the room one pace and stopped, respecting distance. "Your dad told me people worry about you being alone," I said. "They think you might hurt yourself. Does watching this make that better or worse?" Iris's jaw tightened. For a second I saw a child underneath the elegance, terrified of her own thoughts. She pointed at the corner camera and said, "Doesn't matter. There are no secrets in this house." The next day, Evan's signal came through long enough for me to speak. I told him about the therapy session. Nothing else. I didn't mention the clips. I didn't mention the scars. Evan's relief was so loud I could hear it through static. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for not running." I almost said I was tempted. Instead, I asked him something I'd been avoiding. "Evan, what happened to Iris before?" The line went quiet. Then he said, "I don't know everything. I know enough to hate myself." Over the following weeks, Iris's hostility changed shape. She still tested. She still provoked. But the provocation shifted from cruelty to curiosity, as if she was checking whether my calm had limits. She started leaving notes on the fridge. "Milk is low. Stop buying coriander. It tastes like soap." Once, after I placed a bowl of soup by her door when she was sick, I found the empty bowl washed and left outside my study with a sticky note that read, "Not poison. Acceptable." I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. Then, one evening Iris said, "You want to know why the other wives left?" She said it like she was offering me a horror movie trailer. I put down my pen. "Only if you want to tell me," I replied. Iris sat on the edge of the couch, knees pulled up, hoodie sleeves hiding her hands. "The second wife loved money," she said. "She spent Dad's salary faster than he could earn it, then blamed him for not earning more. She didn't hit me, not like the first stepmother did. She just treated me like a receipt." Iris's eyes went flat. When the bank letters came, she ran. My breath caught. "The first stepmother hit you?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Iris's gaze flicked away. "Not important," she said, but her fingers tightened on the fabric. "Dad didn't know. Or he didn't want to know. He was at sea. He was always at sea. People love him because he's gentle. Gentle men don't see knives until they're bleeding." Her words were too old for 17, too practiced. I felt anger rise at the stepmother, at fate, at the whole idea that a child had to become fluent in cruelty. I didn't ask for details. I asked, "Do you want her held accountable?" Iris gave a short laugh. "Accountability is for rich people and dead people," I said. "That's not true." She stared at me. "Prove it," she whispered. Before I went hunting through records, I needed to understand what Iris was actually afraid of losing. One afternoon she came home with her mouth set hard and her violin case held too tight. She tossed a letter onto the table. The paper carried a fancy logo and a signature with flourishes, like someone believed cursive could make a demand gentler. "It's from my mother," Iris said, spitting the word like a seed. "She wants me to spend the holidays in Sydney." Translation: She wants to parade me at her husband's fundraiser and prove she didn't abandon me. She suddenly remembered I exist because I'm useful again. Evan's ex-wife, Sabrina, had been a shadow in the house, present in legal paperwork, absent in dinner conversations. Evan rarely spoke her name. When he did, it was with careful neutrality. the way you speak about a storm that already passed but might return. Iris told me the story in fragments. Sabrina's wealthy parents, the pressure to marry well, the resentment when Evan chose long voyages over high society weekends, the new partner who promised glamour. She didn't leave because Dad was cruel, Iris said. She left because he wouldn't become someone else. Then she added, quieter, and because I reminded her of her mistake. Sabrina's new husband, according to Iris, ran a wellness brand that sold vitamin powders, collagen drinks, and confidence in plastic jars. He liked posting photos of luxury cars beside slogans about discipline. He liked using words like family in marketing copy, as if the word were a coupon. Iris pulled up his social media on her phone and shoved it at me. The man, Kelvin Ward, grinned on yachts with models and influencers, his arm always around someone thin and smiling. Under one photo he wrote, "We build legacies." Iris snorted. "He builds lawsuits," she said. "Dad says don't look, but I do. I like knowing what kind of monster is nearby." The letter invited Iris to Sydney for a gala, where Kelvin's company would celebrate youth empowerment. Iris's laugh turned into a cough. "Empowerment," she repeated. "They want me on stage with a violin to prove their charity has culture. They want me to smile next to my mother so everyone forgets she disappeared. And if I refuse, she'll go to court again and say Dad's controlling me." She looked at me with those gray-green eyes that saw right through excuses. "Do you know what it feels like?" she asked. "To be the evidence in someone else's argument?" I could have said we'd ignore it, but ignoring wealthy people sometimes invites bigger trouble. Instead, I asked Iris, "What do you want?" She blinked as if the question didn't belong to her. Then she said, slowly, "I want them to stop using me. I want to stop being the thing they fight over. I want quiet. Not happiness, not revenge, quiet." I gave a small nod. "Then we make quiet a legal fact," I said. "We document, we set boundaries, and we don't give them easy angles." Iris stared. "You talk like a lawyer." I shrugged. "I write for people who hire lawyers. I've picked up the rhythm." That evening, I emailed Evan and asked for every custody document he had. He replied within minutes, despite the time zone difference, attaching scanned papers like a man dumping his shame onto my inbox. The agreements were old, patched by amendments, full of clauses meant to soothe adult egos, not protect a child. Sabrina's visitation rights were broad on paper, narrow in reality. The language mentioned Iris's emotional volatility more than it mentioned the adults who'd failed her. Reading it made my hands tremble with fury. I called a family law solicitor recommended by the school counselor and booked a consultation under my own name, because that was the role I'd accepted. Not replacement mother, not savior, but the adult who would not look away. In the office, I listened as the solicitor explained options, revising the plan, adding conditions, insisting on supervised contact if there was a pattern of emotional harm. "The court will care about safety," she said, "but they'll also care about evidence." I thought of Iris's sentence. "Prove it," I said. "Then we gather evidence, carefully." When I told Iris we were taking the letter seriously, she tensed like a bowstring. "You're going to drag me into court," she accused. I shook my head. "No, I'm going to build you an exit ramp. You decide when to use it." Iris stared at me for a long moment, then muttered, "Fine, but if she shows up here, I'm not being polite." I said, "You don't have to be polite. You just have to be safe." Her mouth twitched. "That's your favorite word." "It's my job," I replied. Iris rolled her eyes, but she didn't reject the plan. I proved it the way I knew how. With documents, patterns, and patience, ghostwriting teaches you how to find someone's truth inside their lies. I started at the edges. I asked Evan for names, dates, old addresses, nothing emotional. He hesitated, then sent me what he had, as if he was sliding a box of rusted nails across the table and hoping I wouldn't cut myself. I didn't tell Iris what I was doing. I learned early that surprises, even good ones, can feel like traps to someone who's been trapped before. I dug through public records, old court listings, archived posts. I used my old network, people from HR forums, ex-admins who kept screenshots the way others keep souvenirs. I found the second wife first, not as a villain in a movie, but as a woman in debt, her curated life crumbling in comments. Iris's expression didn't change when I showed her the evidence. She only said, "Good." It wasn't satisfaction. It was a kind of exhausted math. consequences finally matching actions. The first stepmother was harder. Her name had changed, then changed again. She moved cities the way some people move moods. I tracked her through a trail of complaints on rental sites, then through a small news clipping about a workplace investigation at a music conservatory. That detail made my stomach drop. Iris played violin. Iris's hands were her language. If someone had harmed those hands, I stopped myself from spiraling. I gathered what I could and handed it, not to Iris, but to a child advocacy hotline that handled historical harm and could advise without exposing a teenager to more damage. I followed their guidance, filed a report with the local service, and provided the documentation. The process wasn't dramatic. It wasn't instant. It was paperwork, and waiting and careful language. But paperwork is a weapon too, if you aim it correctly. Kelvin didn't wait for the holidays. 2 weeks after the letter, a glossy black SUV rolled into our driveway like it owned the pavement. Iris saw it through the window and went rigid. "That's them," she said. Her voice wasn't frightened. It was icy, a survival mask. I stepped outside before she could, because predators love a spectacle, and teens shouldn't have to play defense against their own parents. Sabrina emerged first, wearing a camel coat and a smile practiced in mirrors. She looked like Iris in the bone structure, but not in the eyes. Iris's eyes held weather. Sabrina's held calculations. Kelvin followed, cologne announcing him before his shoes did. He carried a gift bag with a luxury logo, as if you could purchase a relationship with a receipt. Sabrina greeted me with a bright, thin warmth. "You must be the new wife," she said, emphasizing new. "I'm Iris's mother." I nodded. "Mara," I replied. "Iris is busy." Sabrina's smile tightened. "I'm here to see my daughter." "That's my right." She held up her phone, already recording, thumb hovering like a trigger. Kelvin lifted his chin, scanning the house, then the street, as if checking what kind of audience we had. I kept my voice calm. "You can see Iris in accordance with the agreement," I said, "and with her consent. She's 17. Her counselor recommends planned contact, not surprise visits." Sabrina scoffed. "Counselor? You mean you've been turning her against me?" Behind the glass, Iris appeared for half a second, then vanished. I could feel her listening. I didn't raise my voice. "Nobody can turn Iris against you," I said. "That would require a bond that can be manipulated. If you want contact, schedule it through the solicitor. Today is not scheduled. Today is a performance." Kelvin's grin flashed. "Careful, Mara. You're a guest in this family. Sabrina gave birth to her." His tone made birth sound like a deed. I looked him in the eye. "Birth is a biological fact," I said. "Parenting is repeated action. If you want to discuss rights, you can do it with a judge, not on my doorstep." Sabrina's phone wobbled as her smile finally cracked. "Let me in," she hissed. I answered, still calm. "No." They tried intimidation next. Kelvin stepping closer, voice dropping, suggesting Evan's reputation could be ruined, hinting at stories about unstable households and dangerous stepmothers. I heard my own pulse, but I kept my posture steady. "If you threaten us," I said, "I'll treat it as evidence. If you trespass, I'll call the police. If you keep recording, remember that minors' safety is a protected interest. You're welcome to leave peacefully." Kelvin laughed like I'd made a joke. Sabrina stared at the window, sensing Iris's presence, and shouted, "Iris, come here. Don't let this woman poison you." The word poison hit me like a slap, because it was exactly what Iris feared. That affection came with a hidden toxin. I lifted my chin and said, loud enough for Iris to hear through the glass, "You don't have to come out. You are not required to perform for anyone." The SUV finally left, tires spitting small stones. Iris didn't come downstairs for an hour. When she did, her face was controlled, but her hands shook as she poured water. "You didn't let them in," she said, like she couldn't believe the sentence. I replied, "You're not a prop. This house isn't a stage." Iris stared at the counter, then whispered, "My mother always shows up like that, like she's doing me a favor by remembering my name." I let the silence sit. Then Iris said bitterly, "Kelvin offered to sponsor my auditions if I cooperated. That's what the letter was. A bribe with ribbons." My stomach turned. I didn't ask for more. I only said, "Then we remove his leverage." Removing leverage meant understanding Kelvin's business. I didn't need to destroy him out of vengeance. I needed to make sure he couldn't threaten Evan with lawsuits or smear campaigns financed by easy money. So I did what I'd done with the stepmother investigation. I looked for the seams. Wellness companies rely on stories, and stories leave fingerprints. I searched regulatory filings, ingredient lists, influencer contracts. I found a pattern of exaggerated claims and fine print disclaimers. I found customer complaints buried under sponsored posts. Most importantly, I found former employees in online forums who spoke in careful code about unpaid wages and pressured sales tactics. One of them, a warehouse supervisor, agreed to talk if I promised anonymity. He sent me screenshots of internal emails, quotas, threats, instructions to delete negative reviews. None of it was cinematic. All of it was damning. I brought the dossier to the solicitor, who advised me to pass it. Not to social media, but to the appropriate watchdog agency and to Iris's guardian ad litem. Keep your hands clean, she warned. Let institutions do what they're designed to do, even if they're slow. Slow again. Glaciers again. But this time, Kelvin's world depended on speed and shine. Institutions don't care about shine. A month later, Kelvin's company received an inquiry, then another. Sponsors pulled back. Influencers deleted posts quietly. Kelvin responded the way insecure men always do. He escalated. He sent Evan a legal letter accusing him of alienation. He demanded access to Iris for family branding opportunities. The solicitor laughed when she read it. He put the motive in writing, she said. How generous. The court date arrived in late autumn. Iris wore a plain black dress and no makeup, refusing to be styled for anyone. Evan joined by video from the ship, his face pale with stress. Sabrina arrived in a white blouse that suggested innocence. Kelvin sat beside her, jaw clenched. The judge listened, asked careful questions, read the counselor's report, considered Iris's age and stated wishes. When the judge invited Iris to speak, Iris's voice shook only once. I don't want to live with my mother, she said. I don't want surprise visits. I don't want my face used to sell anything. I want contact on my terms, in safe places, with people I trust nearby. Sabrina's eyes flashed with rage. Kelvin whispered something harsh. The judge didn't look impressed. The ruling adjusted the plan. Scheduled contact only. Supervised at first, with a clear path to reduction, if Sabrina proved consistent care. Kelvin was explicitly excluded from decision-making. Quiet. Iris's quiet became enforceable. When Iris noticed the shift social workers calling, the school counselor suddenly more present, she confronted me. She didn't yell. Her voice was too controlled. You did something, she said. You promised you wouldn't. I felt my heart crack, then steady. I promised I wouldn't share your secrets, I replied. This isn't your secret. This is an adult's crime. Iris's eyes glittered with rage and fear. You don't get to decide what I can handle, she said. I nodded. You're right. I don't. But I do get to decide what I can live with. I can't live with letting harm stay invisible. She stormed to her room. The sensor beeped as her door closed. I stood in the hallway and let the beep be the only sound for a long time. That night she didn't eat. She didn't come down for cereal. My alarm went off at midnight, and I didn't ignore it. I knocked softly. Iris, I said. Silence. I knocked again. If you need me to sit outside your door, I'll sit. If you need space, I'll give it. But you're not alone tonight. A minute later, the door opened a crack. Iris's face appeared, pale in the dim light. She didn't invite me in. She didn't apologize. She whispered, Sit. But don't talk. I sat on the floor in the hallway with my back against the wall, and for an hour we listened to the house breathe. When my legs fell asleep, I didn't move. When Iris finally said, I hate being seen like I'm fragile, I answered, then let's build strength. Strength doesn't mean loneliness. It means support you choose. She didn't reply, but she left the door open another inch. Weeks passed. The investigation moved like glaciers. Slow, relentless, rearranging landscapes without asking permission. Iris went to therapy more than once. She never called it helpful, but she stopped calling it stupid. Her rehearsals improved. She started leaving her sleeves pushed up when she was warm. Not hiding, not showing, just existing. One night, she asked if I'd ever wanted to vanish. I said yes. She nodded like she already knew. Then Evan called, voice rough with exhaustion and excitement. We're docking in Punta Arenas, he said. 2 days. I can see you, if you want. The idea of meeting my husband in a foreign port felt surreal, like a scene from someone else's novel. Iris overheard and said, too quickly, "We're going." I stared at her. "Are you sure?" Iris rolled her eyes. "Don't make it weird. He's my dad." But her hands trembled as she zipped her backpack. She was scared of joy. I understood. We flew south, then took a ferry, then boarded a budget boat that smelled like diesel and wet rope. Evan insisted we didn't need to step onto his ship. "It's harsh," he warned. "Cold, loud, not safe for tourists," Iris said. "We're not tourists, we're family." She said the word family like she was testing a new language, unsure whether it would betray her. Evan's silence crackled through the phone. Then he cleared his throat and said, "Okay, if you insist." When we reached the port, Evan stood waiting in a green rain jacket, hair damp, eyes searching. He looked thinner than in the photo, shoulders tense as if he carried the ship's weight on them. Iris ran 3 steps, then stopped, pride pulling her back. Evan didn't force the hug. He approached slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. He touched her shoulder. Then, when she didn't flinch, pulled her into his chest. Iris's face pressed into his jacket. She didn't cry, but her hands clutched the fabric like a lifeline. He hugged me too, carefully, as if I might break. His smell was salt and metal, and something warm beneath it, engine grease and soap. "Thank you for coming," he whispered. "Thank you for keeping my home alive." I wanted to say it wasn't just his home anymore. Instead, I squeezed his hand and said, "Show us your world." The ship was not romantic. It was a beast of steel and cables, corridors that echoed, rooms that vibrated with machinery. The crew eyed us with the wary politeness reserved for captains' families, people you respect because the boss will ask later. Iris walked beside Evan with her chin lifted, pretending she belonged, then trailing her fingers along the railing like she needed proof the metal was real. That night, as the vessel moved away from shore for a short supply run, the weather turned. The forecast had promised manageable winds. The ocean laughed. Waves slapped the hull with growing impatience. Plates rattled in the galley. Evan's crew moved faster. Voices clipped. Iris hovered near a doorway, pretending calm. I felt the old fear from my divorce helplessness in a place you can't control rise like bile. Evan looked at me once and said, "Stay inside. Both of you. Don't be brave." But then, alarm sounded a hatch, not fully secured, cargo shifting. A crew member shouted that a line had snapped. The ship lurched. Iris grabbed the wall, eyes wide. Evan sprinted down the corridor. I heard his voice bark orders. The vessel tilted again, enough to throw a chair across the floor. In that moment, bravery wasn't heroic. It was practical. I saw Iris's face. The calculation of risk. The dread of watching her father disappear into danger. The reflex to freeze. I grabbed her wrist. "Come," I said. "Not to interfere. To help where we can." Iris tried to pull away. Dad said, "Don't be brave," I snapped, more sharply than usual. He didn't say, "Don't be useful. You know knots, right? You play violin. Your hands are trained." Iris blinked, startled by the logic. Then she nodded once, jaw set. We found safety harnesses hung by the bulkhead. I clipped mine and clipped hers, double-checked the latches, and fed her the line with hands that refused to shake. We reached the cargo bay entrance where crew were wrestling a door against the wind. Evan's face went white when he saw us. "Mara!" he yelled, rage and terror braided together. Iris shouted back, "We're clipped. Tell us what to do." Evan's eyes flicked to the harness straps, the carabiners, the anchor points. His engineer's brain overrode his fear. "Hold the line," he ordered Iris. "Do not let go. Mara, stay behind the threshold. Pass ropes only. If a wave hits, drop everything and crouch." We worked like that for minutes that felt like hours. Iris held the line with both hands, forearms trembling, teeth clenched. I fed rope, tied off loose ends, kept my body low. Cold spray stung my face. The ship groaned like an animal. Somewhere metal banged hard, then stopped. Evan and 2 crew secured the hatch. The cargo stopped sliding. The tilt eased by half a degree. Half a degree felt like salvation. A final wave slammed the hull, and the floor shifted under us. Iris's boots skidded. Her grip slipped an inch. I lunged, anchored my weight, and grabbed her harness strap, hauling her back by pure instinct. Iris's eyes met mine, wild. "Don't let go," she gasped. My voice came out raw. I won't. When the ship finally steadied, Evan stumbled toward us, breath ragged. He didn't scold. He didn't praise. He touched Iris's forehead with shaking fingers like he was checking whether she was still real. Iris stared at him, then at me. Her lips parted, and a word fell out before pride could catch it. Mom. The word hit the air like a flare. Iris froze, horrified at herself. Evan froze, stunned. I felt my chest ache so sharply I thought I might fold in half. I didn't correct her. I didn't celebrate. I simply said, softly, I'm here. Iris swallowed hard, blinked fast, and looked away as if she'd dropped something fragile and hoped nobody noticed. Afterward, we sat in the cramped cabin Evan had prepared, listening to the storm fade into manageable anger. Iris curled into the corner with a blanket, pretending she wasn't shaking. Evan sat beside me, face in his hands. I almost lost you, he whispered. I almost lost her. I placed my palm on his wrist. You didn't, I said. And you won't, if we stop pretending you can carry this alone. Evan's shoulders trembled. He nodded without looking up, as if shame weighed more than the sea. Later, when Iris fell asleep, Evan turned to me with the same apology smile he'd worn in the Sichuan restaurant. There's something else, he said. His voice was tight. This season, the funding was cut. The ship ran fewer missions. The bonus, it's smaller. I won't be able to send what I promised. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He said sorry like it was a confession. I remembered his frugal clothes, his careful math at dinner, the way fear had made him offer numbers as proof of love. I took his hands, rough and warm, and held them. Evan, I said, I didn't marry your bank account. I married a man who showed up to a date on time and tried to tell the truth even when it embarrassed him. I married a father who keeps fighting for his kid even when he's exhausted. Money matters, but it's not the only contract. Evan's eyes filled. He blinked hard, as if tears were a leak he could fix. I smiled. We'll make it work. We already are. In the weeks after we returned home, the investigation reached a turning point. Authorities confirmed patterns. Other complaints surfaced. The first stepmother was questioned. Not by Iris, not by me, but by professionals trained to hold predators accountable without breaking the children they'd harmed. Iris didn't attend. She didn't need to. She watched the process like someone watching a distant fire. Painful, but cleansing. One night she said, I thought justice was a fairy tale. I answered, justice is slow. But slow doesn't mean fake. Iris still had hard nights. She still fought the urge to disappear when emotions got loud. But she started knocking on my door instead of isolating. Sometimes she only stood there, silent, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, eyes tired. I would slide over on the couch and let her sit. We watched mindless shows. We drank tea. We didn't talk about trauma unless she chose to. That was the new rule. Choice creates safety. Surveillance creates rebellion. Evan came home more often as his schedule shifted, and the house slowly stopped feeling like a bunker. We removed 2 of the hallway cameras. Iris insisted we keep the window sensor for now, then surprised us by saying, I'll tell you if I'm not okay. Evan's face cracked open with relief and terror, like a man learning to breathe again. He said, Thank you. And Iris rolled her eyes and muttered, Don't make it weird. But she leaned her shoulder against him when she thought I wasn't looking. The first time Iris brought home a friend, I almost cried. It wasn't because I wanted normal. It was because I knew how hard it is to invite someone into a house that once felt like a trap. Her friend glanced at me and said, So you're Mara. Iris corrected. She's family. The pause in her voice was small, but the words stood upright anyway. One afternoon I found Iris practicing violin in the living room, windows open, late sun turning dust into gold. Her bow moved steady, the notes clean, not desperate. Evan stood in the doorway listening, tears openly on his face. He didn't wipe them. He didn't pretend they were sea spray. He simply listened, hands clasped, like a man in prayer. Iris finished the piece, lowered the violin, and looked at him. What? She demanded, half embarrassed. Evan's voice shook. Nothing. Just, you're here. That night, as I washed dishes, Iris came to the kitchen and leaned against the counter. When I said that word on the ship, she began, cheeks faintly red, it doesn't mean I forgot my mother. I nodded. I didn't think it did. Iris stared at the sink. It just means I needed one. My hands stilled in the soapy water. I turned, met her eyes, and said, "You can have me without erasing anyone. Love isn't a limited resource. It's a practice." Iris swallowed, then said gruff, "You're so annoying." But her mouth curved, tiny, unwilling, honest. On New Year's Eve, we ate simple food hot pot with too much ginger, because Evan believed ginger could fix anything, Iris complained. Evan laughed. The ocean outside the window was calm for once, its surface reflecting fireworks like scattered coins. Lynn came over and watched us with the satisfied expression of someone who'd gambled on chaos and somehow won. "So," she said. "Stable arrangement?" Iris snorted. "Define stable," I replied. "Stable enough to keep choosing each other tomorrow." Later, when the fireworks faded, I stood on the porch with Evan. The air smelled like salt and smoke. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "I still worry," he admitted. I leaned into him. "Me too," I said. "But worry isn't prophecy. It's just love with a loud voice." Evan laughed quietly, then kissed my forehead. Inside, Iris called, "Are you two being gross?" Evan shouted back, "Yes." Iris groaned, but the groan had no venom in it. It sounded almost like relief. I went to my desk after midnight and opened a blank document. For the first time in years, I typed my own name at the top. The story I was writing wasn't about a tragic girl or a noble father or a woman hired to keep the peace. It was about the salt between us, the sting of old wounds, the way the sea tries to pull you under, and the stubborn human choice to keep someone's head above water anyway. I didn't know how the ending would look. I only knew this. Nobody in this house would be left